Look around you. The lights in your room, your phone, Wi-Fi, your refrigerator, your fan. All of this feels so normal that we barely even think about it, but every one of these things is part of a story that began more than 100 years ago. Now imagine this for a moment. The lights in your house suddenly go out. Then your phone battery dies, the internet disappears, the streets of the city fall into darkness, and slowly, you begin to realize the entire world is moving backward. Yes, we are going back in time. We are about to see where the world might have ended up if Nikola Tesla had never been born. 1 year, another year, 10 years, 50 years, and now, we have arrived at a time when nighttime meant one thing: darkness. The year was around. Gas lamps lit the streets. Machines and factories ran on steam. And after the sun went down, life slowed dramatically. Today, electricity lights our homes and keeps factories running around the clock. But back then, that future was still just a dream. But then humans began learning how to generate electricity, and suddenly a new problem appeared. Generating electricity wasn't enough. The real challenge was getting it from one place to another, hundreds of miles away, to cities, to factories, to homes. And that is where the greatest race in the future of electricity began. On one side was Thomas Edison. On the other side was a man who would soon become one of the most famous names in the history of electricity, Nikola Tesla. But what if Tesla had never been born? Would someone else have taken his place? Or would our modern electrical world have taken a completely different path? To find the answer, we have to enter the race that would eventually light up the world. And this race wasn't simply a battle between two inventors. It was a decision about how the world would receive electricity in the future. On one side was Thomas Edison's system. On the other was a completely different idea, one that Nikola Tesla would help push forward. Edison's system was based on DC, direct current, and it worked. But it had a major limitation. Transmitting DC power over long distances was difficult with the technology of the time. That meant power stations generally had to be located relatively close to the people using the electricity. Now imagine this. A small city needs electricity. If the power station is right in the middle of the city, that's fine. But what if electricity needs to reach a distant area? The farther the distance and the bigger the problem, and cities were growing rapidly. They didn't just need electricity, they needed electricity that could travel. And this is where Tesla's ideas became important. He worked on systems based on AC, alternating current. One of AC's biggest advantages was that its voltage could be easily increased or decreased using transformers. And that meant electricity could be transmitted over long distances much more practically. But this was no longer just a scientific debate. There was money involved, business, companies, and the future of entire cities. On one side was the DC system, and on the other, the AC system. Both sides wanted to prove that their technology was better, and slowly, the conflict became known as the War of the Currents. But Tesla wasn't alone in this fight. A major industrial force stepped forward to support his ideas, George Westinghouse. Now Tesla's ideas were no longer just theories sitting inside a laboratory. They had a chance to be used in the real world. And then came an opportunity that would help determine which electrical system would shape the future. A massive project, a major city, and a demonstration that would show the world for the first time. Electricity could transform far more than just one city block, but if Tesla had never existed, would Westinghouse have found the same path? And if he hadn't, where would the history of electricity have gone? And over the next few years, the outcome of this battle would affect not just America, but the future of the entire world. But the biggest turning point in this story was still ahead, because proving that an idea works and convincing the entire world to adopt it are two very different things. And now Tesla's ideas were about to face their biggest test yet. The year was in Chicago. America was hosting a massive international exposition. People had come from around the world to see the newest technologies and inventions, and the job of lighting the exposition at night went to AC electricity. When night arrived, thousands of electric lights came alive at once. For the people watching, this was something completely different. Electricity no longer looked like a small convenience inside a building. It looked like a force capable of transforming an entire city. And behind this system were the AC technologies that Tesla had played an important role in developing. But the real test was still ahead, because if AC electricity could truly travel long distances, then power stations didn't have to be built right in the middle of every city. Electricity could come from somewhere else, and that possibility led to an even bigger project. In New York State, plans were being developed to generate electricity from the enormous power of Niagara Falls. The force of the water would be converted into electricity, and then transmitted to cities far away. This wasn't just another power station, it was a question. Could humans harness the power of nature and deliver that energy to entire cities? In 1895, AC-based power generation began at Niagara Falls. Electricity began traveling over long-distance lines to Buffalo, and the world was beginning to see something clearly. Electricity didn't have to be generated in the same place where it was consumed. That idea would help lay the foundation for the modern electrical grid, a power plant in one location, a city somewhere else, and between them, long transmission lines carrying electricity across great distances. Slowly, this model spread to different parts of the world. But now, let's return to our original question. If Tesla had never been born, would AC electricity have been developed at all? Not necessarily. Other scientists and engineers were already working on AC technology, but without Tesla, the path might have progressed differently, and perhaps some major decisions would have been made in another way. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Without Tesla, the world probably wouldn't have remained in darkness forever. But would it have become the world we know today? Would electricity have reached every home as quickly? Would major cities have grown at the same speed? Would industry have developed at the same pace? And the biggest question, could the modern world have been born decades later? In the next part, we are going to remove Tesla from history completely, and then we'll see who takes control of the future of electricity. And now, let's see what history does without him. So let's do it. Let's remove Tesla from history. No Tesla AC system, no Tesla laboratory, and no man whose work played such an important role in advancing AC technology. Now the question isn't whether electricity disappears. The question is, which path does electricity take instead? The most likely answer is other engineers, because Tesla wasn't the only person working on AC electricity. Scientists and engineers across Europe and America were developing AC and transformer technology in different ways. So, AC electricity would probably still emerge, but perhaps not as quickly. And sometimes in history, even a few years of delay can have enormous consequences. If large power stations and long-distance transmission systems developed more slowly, electricity might have taken longer to reach smaller cities and remote areas. Industrial development could also have slowed in some places, and the world's nights might have remained darker for a little longer. Think about it. If electricity spreads more slowly, factory development could also be affected. If factories grow more slowly, cities could develop differently. And if cities change, transportation, communication, and trade could also evolve along different paths. In other words, the absence of one inventor wouldn't affect electricity alone. It could create a chain reaction across society. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, because Tesla wasn't famous only for AC electricity. He also experimented with motors, wireless communication, and many other areas of electrical technology. If he had never existed, other people might have pursued some of these ideas, but would they have done it at exactly the same time? Maybe our world would still have electricity. Maybe cities would still be illuminated. Maybe our homes would still have power. But the path technology took could have been different by years, or even decades, and sometimes that's all it takes to change history. But one question remains. If Tesla had never existed, Would someone else have eventually stepped in and done the same work? Or would Tesla's absence have made the world not just slightly slower, but permanently different? The answer may lie in one of history's greatest truths. Great inventions are rarely created by one person alone. They are born from the combined efforts of many people. That is the biggest mystery in this entire story. Maybe Tesla wasn't the only reason the world became electrified, but he certainly helped push history in a particular direction. So, what if that direction had changed? Our electricity, our cities, our technology, and perhaps our entire modern world. How different would they be? And now, the final question. Now, come back to your room, the same light, the same phone, the same internet, the same world, where electricity has become such a normal part of life that we barely think about it, but now we know how extraordinary the story behind that light really was. So, what is the answer? If Nikola Tesla had never been born, would we have electricity today? The most honest answer is yes. The development of electricity wasn't the work of one person. Scientists and engineers around the world were already working toward the same goal. But that doesn't mean Tesla was unnecessary. His work on AC systems and electric motors had a major influence on the technological race of his time. His ideas gained powerful industrial support from people like Westinghouse, and eventually, AC electricity became widely adopted. So if we remove Tesla from history, the world probably wouldn't remain in darkness forever. But the story of electricity could have taken a different path. Some technologies might have arrived later, some cities might have been electrified later, some industries might have developed more slowly, and it's possible our modern world would look somewhat different. And that's one of the most fascinating things about history. Sometimes one person doesn't change the entire world alone, but they can push the world in a particular direction. Tesla may not have created electricity by himself, but he was certainly one of the people who helped shape the direction its future could take. So the next time you turn on a light at night, plug your phone into a charger, or look at a city glowing in the darkness, take a moment to remember, this light didn't appear out of nowhere. Behind it are decades of experiments, thousands of engineers, and people who dared to think far beyond their own time. And one of those people was Nikola Tesla. But perhaps the biggest question in this story isn't, would the world have remained in darkness without Tesla? The real question is, how different would the world have been without Tesla? And that is something we can never know for certain, because in history, we can see what happened. But what could have happened will always remain a mystery. And perhaps that is the true legacy of a great inventor.